Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, here with RDV. Tonight's show, Kicking It. We're discussing the 2003 underappreciated movie starring Al Pacino, Bridget Moynahan, and Colin Farrell, The Recruit, where you have a spy game sort of situation going on here between Al Pacino, Bridget Moynahan, and Colin Farrell. RDV, I got to tell you, when I first saw this movie, I think I saw it like on cable TV or a little bit later in the year when it came out, 2003, and it's an engrossing film. It's about 2 hours long. I would call this like a spy thriller. Brad Pitt did one called Spy Game with Robert Redford, which is really good, and this one seems just as good too. And I got to tell you, for me, this is the movie that really put Colin Farrell on the map. We all know about Al Pacino. Bridget Moynahan here was a little bit younger in her career too. I thought she did fine as well. But overall, a much underappreciated movie, which is why we're talking about it today. Great film, some interesting things to discuss with it too. What's your initial thoughts?
This is the one movie I get by Colin Farrell, and I can watch it multiple times. I know he'd been in a movie before this called Phone Booth. Everybody remembers that movie where he's stuck in a phone booth and he's being shot at.
Yes.
And now, also that same year was Minority Report, still in Heart's War. So he was in a bunch of movies. The first place I saw him was American Outlaws, which was 2001. So he already had wrapped up, and had a whole, or not since I wrapped up, but he had a whole bunch of movies behind him. So when I saw this come out, I just watched it because as Al Pacino, I'll watch this, I've seen Colin Farrell, I liked him a little bit in the movies. So I saw this, and I was like, this is a spy thriller, and I love spy movies. I love 3 Days of Condor, I know Spy Games.
Mm-hmm.
I just growing up watching James Bond. So and this is a whole thing about a guy getting recruited into the CIA. Meets a girl, Bridget Moynahan, who had been in Coyote Ugly, and I think some other stuff too before that. But it's just one of those things where this guy, and it just felt so down to earth, so real. It's like the guy, his father went missing, a couple of years before this. He's been and the report they're saying oh, it doesn't add up to what he believes, because it said oh, your father crashed the plane, or he's like, dude, my father would not crash a plane. He's an expert pilot and stuff. I've flown with him all the time, and there's it's just things aren't adding up. So he created his own website with his buddies and stuff. But yeah, I just love. I never came across a movie where I could watch this more than once, because I watched it probably 8 or 9 or 10 times back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, I watched it again. This movie came out back in 2003. This is the summer when I was turned 2000. Yeah, when I was turning 18. Remember seeing this with my buddies going into theater. I was just blown away. Before this, I really hadn't been an Al Pacino fan, but after seeing this, I went to go watch Scarface and some of his other movies, and even those don't hold up to this movie. I just love the whole who can you trust and who can you not trust in this whole entire movie.
Well, when you say Al Pacino's, those things don't hold up to this movie. This is the movie for me that really marks the decline of Al Pacino's acting career, because he just really starts yelling stuff about halfway through this movie. Scarface is a tremendous movie.
Oh yes, I'm not trying to put it down, but I'm just saying I just love the way this movie is put together. It's flows so evenly, and I get to say, I can watch Scarface maybe once or twice, and then I have to wait a while, so I forget a little bit just to watch again. So it's new because I know what's going on.
Well, I think when we talk about the actors in here, Colin Farrell, he's a smart guy, top of his class at MIT. Him and his gang are able to create the software, which at the time was cutting edge. We see that he's being recruited by Al Pacino to the CIA. He ends up going there. What was really neat too is you get to see a recruit literally go through the steps of what it takes to get through the CIA, through the testing. Obviously, he's got an attraction to Bridget Moynahan's character. She's trying to be in there as well. Turns out that those two are getting played off of each other a little bit later in the film without saying too much, but they have really good chemistry. And this, for some reason, just Colin Farrell seems so relaxed. He has those beautiful puppy dog sad eyes expressions on him. So he's a good looking hot guy, soft spoken, but he looks like a man of action too. He looks like the role. Now Brad Pitt in Spy Game with Robert Redford kind of had a little bit of a different vibe too, more of a California surf vibe, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Farrell's got that almost He's Irish, of course, and he likes to drink, but he almost has that Scottish James Connery thing to him where you believe he's almost like an animal a little bit. There's just something behind his gaze, and you could even see it when he played against Daredevil as the bad guy Bullseye in that movie that came out in 2002, 2003. And here, it's almost a 2-hour movie, but an hour into it, not much really happens in terms of action. And that's one thing that makes it great, is you care about the characters, you're interested in the scenarios that they're being put in, you don't know who to trust. Obviously, CIA is going to put you in situations that you may not be familiar with or you're uncomfortable with. And so we don't know who to trust. And of course, Al Pacino is the recruit who's like, hey, buddy, I'm not your friend. I'm not your pal. It's kind of nice to you because I'm recruiting you, but you're here and this is it. So it's kind of interesting to see how Al Pacino plays this so soft-spoken until the end of the film. And you see where you've got Colin Farrell's character kind of looking up to him almost as like a father figure, because Colin Farrell's father may or may not have worked for the CIA, and that's kind of a plot line too. But what I really liked about here was, okay, there was no big op, there was no big assassination. It was basically, hey, you know, he gets kidnapped, he gets tortured, he breaks, he gets kicked out, but then Al Pacino comes back and says, no, you're the knock, you're the special agent.
Yeah, and that's where
yeah,
that's where I was like, oh my gosh, like something's going on here, and it's like, and I'm thinking like, what's really going on? And it's like, you know, and he's basically told that, hey, your girlfriend, she's a spy, and it just throws his life upside down even more. You know, it's like I said, like in the game of spies, you really don't know who to trust. And then like we build our bonds on people that we like and stuff, you know, but can we really trust that person? So this whole movie is kind of like, it just makes you want to think, you know, more. It's like, you know, as far as, can I really trust people, or should I keep stuff to myself, you know?
Well, one interesting thing about these two is that, and it doesn't get portrayed a lot, these two characters, not Al Pacino, but Bridget Moynahan and Colin Farrell, as recruits into the CIA, she ends up basically going to Langley. He ends up getting a low-level position there so he can literally spy on her. And it's neat because you get all the talk about, well, Langley it's its own city, so once you get through everything, they think you belong in there, but you know, you can't have signals to exit the building. They talk about laser microphones, so it's almost like a legitimate upgrade to the spy game, or it's not a bunch of goofy dumbass devices like you would get in a James Bond film.
The scene where he's talking to her in the parking garage, and he has to hide from the cameras and all that stuff,
so they can kiss and no one can see them.
Yes,
she's got them timed out on their 2 different rotations. Yeah, they're both very smart people, and smart people have a tough time getting along with other people that aren't super smart or engaging or challenging in a way. So they are on each other's level, and they're both kind of a little awkward. Yet you look at it and you're like, wow, this is a power, sexy, smart couple. But in the field that they're in, it's extremely difficult to have what you would call, I guess, somewhat normal positive relations. And that's always why the recruits and government agents are like a professional athlete. It's just such a unique experience. Not everybody can appreciate what you go through. So you see these two recruits become close. They become a couple, as it were. Then it turns out about 2/3 through the film that both of them realize something's not on the up and up. And I'm not saying too much here because then the movie has a resolution to it. But it's, again, I have to point out how just their performances and their chemistry work really well together on screen. Let's talk a minute about Bridget Moynahan. She'd been in a couple things. She's an athlete, gorgeous woman, total babe. She really does the role here well. She doesn't come across as overly sexually or overly flirty, but womanly enough, and so it's believable. And of course, as a guy, you're going, well, she's got to be a spy, right? But that's not the way it's set up. It's not like somebody he just meets. It's somebody that kind of doesn't like him, and they kind of go through things together, and it's because of the difficulty that they share together, they kind of form this bond.
Yeah, where he has to put the bug onto her computer, and then while they're staying at her house, and then she puts the microphone or little.
She does it to him, basically,
and his jacket's up. It's like, they know each other, like they suspect each other to be the spy, but like they're not saying it. It's just like, it's like, it's just like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, taken seriously.
Well, and the other thing too is in a movie, we talk a lot about, you can have dialogue basically explain things, or you can show people things, and a really great, I think, filmmakers show and don't tell. And here, even though you might get a few snippets of information, you're watching them do their thing. So when they're walking and they're being tailed and they're called the rabbit and they've got the eyes following them, they talk about how they rotate. That's field stuff. That's how you do it. You see what they're trying to look at, and you're looking at it through the eyes of a potential agent. And it's just pretty fascinating that, they talk about having a baseline when they're going through the lie detector tests. So there's just something about spy stuff, I think, that turns on that inner geek in all of us as you're going through it. And the film is very patient with this because, again, it's not a shootout film. It's not an action film. It is a spy thriller. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going around that corner. You don't know who's who. There's no surprise characters or anything. And again, as a 2-hour movie, it's hard, I think, for a movie with that length, where there's not a lot of quote unquote action, to keep your engagement. But I agree with you totally with what you said at the beginning. This is a very rewatchable film that can suck you in early on, and you just get caught up in the performances.
Do you know who was in here? I forgot. It was Gabriel Macht, who later went on to do Spirit. The movie came out in 2008, the Will Eisner comic adaptation. So I forgot he was even in this. Like, I'm going back and watching this. I'm like, wow. I mean, there's people I did not know were in this movie. Which is, it's like I said, like, so that's not a knock to Gabriel, but I forgot that he was in this movie because I remember him from being basically from what is he? He's on that new. Isn't he on a lawyer show now?
I wouldn't know.
Or yeah, whatever. Anyway, but he was in this movie, and then he went on to do Spirit. But other than that, I really don't know anything else he's been in. Like, I think it was just that. Behind Enemy Lines is the other movie he's in, but it doesn't really ruin the fact that I don't remember it. If anything, it actually helps out more because he's a good actor, phenomenal actor, and even though he has a minor role in the movie, but I just love the whole set of this movie. El Pacino coming in and giving me a tap and like, hey, I want you to do this, and then that whole scene though where they're training him, he's like, he's torturing him, he's leaving for days. The psychological tour when it hasn't been that long, the whole thing, and then his Burke, is Pacino's character knows that those two have a thing, him and Layla, so he uses Layla against him. And then he finally breaks, and that's why he flunks him. But and I said this is it's kind of cool. You said you get to see into what the CIA and Langley, how they recruit people. Now I don't know how accurate it is, because the CIA doesn't like to give away their secrets, But it's for what it is. It's an engrossing movie, from beginning to end.
And the letdown, I think, for the movie kind of has to be the ending a little bit, without saying too much. Once you put all the pieces together, you go, oh, okay, and it just feels like it's a little bit of a letdown. But up until that point, it is exciting. It does get you there. So yeah, it's interesting because it's one of those films that I went, wow, who's this guy? I kind of want to see more of him, because I did see him in Phone Booth. I've known, of course, Pacino and Moynahan being new. Who knew what she would end up doing? But yeah, it's a fun film. I think there's very little films like this that are thrillers, because I don't think the public has a patience or an appetite for them, which they might have back in the 60s when you talk about like The Spy Who Came in from the Cold or other really classic spy films. That one was Richard Burton and other ones. So to me, it's nice when every once in a while you get a spy one that's not totally ridiculous, and you see how smart these people are, how much training they're supposed to get, and a little bit of explanation for it. So yeah, it might be in real life standards a little silly or ridiculous, but it does a much better job of what it does a lot seriously than like any stupid James Bond film. And I'm a big Bond guy, or any other thrillers that are out there. Otherwise, everything goes perfectly and swimmingly. And flying is about relationships, and that's what this film shows. Yeah,
it wasn't all high octane where like giant explosions, people
Fast
it wasn't over the top.
That's
James Bond, and that's it. That's all it is. It's James Bond was the Fast and Furious before Fast and Furious came along. But no, I did like this. I did like the ending. Now he got Burke to basically get the grieve his grievances because he had his laptop and thinking that he made him think that his program was running, his Spartacus program, so he could fast recording it. But so he smashed the laptop, but he chased him outside. at this point, the CIA agents are all out there also because they know that Colin Farrell's in there, but they're ready to shoot Colin Farrell as soon as Burke comes out, and he starts talking about how he's like screw the CIA and all this, then that kind of throws him off guard a little bit.
Yeah.
So he kind of tricks him into that. I mean, and that's cool. I'd rather have someone trick someone with the intelligence than have them listen the fake recording or however a recording of them.
Yeah, or the gun to the head, or the
because they had a little shootout in there, but like you said, that was like a minor part of the film.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a very solid film. I do agree with you. It's very rewatchable. If you are interested in spy stuff, this is it can hook you. It doesn't get talked about a lot. And I remember a couple of years after this film when Miami Vice came out, where they rebooted it. I liked him a whole hell of a lot more than I did Jamie Foxx. And I'm not saying Jamie Foxx doesn't have talent, but there's a characteristic to Colin Farrell, and it's not just necessarily his looks, but it's something about him that you just want to watch. It might be through his eyes or his body language, but I thought it was a semi-decent remake. Plus, Michael Mann actually did it, so it's his baby, and that's why I thought the Miami Vice film, a couple of years after this one, wasn't bad at all. And there's been talk about rebooting Miami Vice for many years now. There's talk about maybe even having the original guys from Miami Vice do like a short-lived thing on Netflix or whatnot. But Colin Farrell is one of the few people that when there's a reboot or a remake or reimaging like that, and I think part of it has to do with Michael Mann. I trust Michael Mann from the Miami Vice show to say, hey, I want this guy Colin Farrell in on it, because I thought he did a great job as Sonny Crockett. And I haven't seen all of Colin Farrell's films, but when he gets some of these certain roles like that, he really excels in them. For some reason, this movie works for him. I think it's definitely worth watching. It's definitely different than a lot of films that are out today, and I kind of miss being able to have an occasional different film like this that might come out during the course of the year. What are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts, if you haven't watched this movie, go ahead and watch it. Like I said, it's a movie that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting a movie like this. I've seen all the other movies, they're spy movies, but this was actually like really decent. And it's Colin Farrell. And like for those who don't know Colin Farrell, like if you're a kid and you just haven't watched movies back from the early 2000s, go back and watch this, and then go watch some of the other movies, Hearts of War and all those other movies. Even Minority Report. That's still a phenomenal movie. So yeah.
Colin Farrell was in that second season of True Detective, and even though a lot of people didn't like True Detective season 2 the way it went, I actually enjoyed his performance. I thought he was funny. So he's got stuff that you don't know exactly where he's going to show up in, but when it does, you're like, okay.
And he's an underrated actor. I wish he'd get more roles. Everybody was all crazy about Johnny Depp, but I'm thinking like, dude, Colin Farrell can act. You let him have a script and let Colin Farrell use his actual accent.
Yeah. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Recruit 2003 with Al Pacino, Colin Farrell, and Bridget Moynahan. Spy thriller type game. Go check that out. Let us know what you think below. Thank you for listening as always. Have a good night and stay extreme.
Later.